Persia, often in its history, was a place of refuge for people. Religions and groups of people that were cast aside in their own areas were welcomed by Persia. I know that from my history as a Jewish person, that when our temple was destroyed, no one else would take the Jewish people except the Persians under Darius and Cyrus. And we don't forget that in our history as well. Well, unfortunately, Persia is no longer, Iran is no longer a place of refuge because of the evil regime that runs Iran. And now even the Persian people themselves, the Iranian people themselves, are subject to the same kind of bad treatment that others who fled to Persia in the early days would experience. So our goal is, if we could set the Iranian people free from the awful dictatorship they have. So I am committed to doing everything I can to see that this regime is, best case, they're gone. Second best case, that they're limited in the kinds of bad things they can do both outside Iran and inside Iran. And I express my solidarity to you on this happy day of Nowruz to work with you for those two goals. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm very honored to be here with former Governor Howard Dean and, of course, Elaine Chao, who was our distinguished former Secretary of Labor, and I'm very honored to be in your presence, and I'm very grateful for your warm reception. I remain concerned, as you do, concerning Iranian behavior, the latest testing of missiles in violation of United Nations Security Council resolutions. I don't want to take a long time except to say that what you are doing and what you have done for so long is a wonderful thing. Everybody in this room had something else to do somewhere in America besides being here today on behalf of the people of Iran who continue to suffer under a brutal regime. And I'm grateful for that. And the people who are suffering are incredibly grateful. And I promise you, first of all, I am an optimist, and I'm a student of history. But I promise you someday, we will be in a square in Tehran dedicating a statue of a brave young woman who we watched bleed to death in the stones of that square, a woman named Neda. I promise you someday we will be there. Thank you.
Thank you for that very warm introduction. And Happy Nowruz to everyone here in the room. Happy Nowruz to our friends in Camp Liberty, to the NCRI in Paris, and to Madame Rajavi, and to millions of Iranian people who we hope can hear our message. And I think that the real issue here that Washington has never answered, honestly, is reform possible within the regime? And Madame Rajavi just gave you a very detailed and factual statement on that. I've heard Madame Rajavi say they would be honored to serve in loyal opposition in an Iran where someone else was freely elected. What's so interesting about this group is that they embraced women's rights in the heart of male-dominated sort of medieval sort of perversion of the Islamic faith. And by holding up the torch of women's rights in the Muslim Middle East, Maryam Rajavi is casting a light on things which is already showing great change and which is threatening the legitimacy of the mullahs every day. So let's work together. Let's search for the truth. Let's dig a little deeper. Let's make sure that Washington knows the facts before we make policy. We have very little time to get this right. And so with this Nowruz, here comes a new beginning. Let's all do it together. I wish you a happy Nowruz, and thank you.
Thank you all very much. So we'll start by, of course, the reason for this occasion, which is Nowruz Mubarak. And it is a new beginning, as Ambassador Bloomfield said, and it's an important beginning. But unfortunately, with every new beginning, we also have to clean up after the old mess. And we've made some mistakes in Iran over the years. I do want to say something about the MEK. I am deeply moved by the notion that Madam Rajavi has, for as long as I have been involved in this, 6 or 7 years, stood up for the notion that women are equal under the law in all circumstances in every society in the face of the earth, including in Iran. That is a core belief that we ought to be embracing here at home, but we also ought to support that notion instead of just using words with actions everywhere in the globe. The fact is that equality for women is directly correlated not only with the economic success of a country, but it is directly coordinated with the notion of a free and democratic state. Not terribly popular in my own party at the time, and we're seeing this being played out in the presidential primary. But I do want to say that before I get off this, that the central mission for me for the last 6 or 8 years has been the plight of the people who are now at Camp Liberty. We must not ever have a foreign policy that is so cynical that we can sacrifice the lives of people who are unarmed and simply exercising their rights to dissent for the sake of supposedly making a deal with an incredibly cynical group of people who support terrorism all around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. I am so pleased to be here with you today to add my voice to those who are fighting for human rights and democracy in Iran. These are basic, fundamental human rights and freedom issues which we must not forget. Let us assure you that many Americans and American leaders hear your voices and support your aspirations for human rights and fundamental freedoms. In today's world of globalized commerce and communications, it is no longer possible to keep new ideas and information from crossing international borders indefinitely. Repressive regimes, they will lose the battle to stop change. Change in the improvement of democracy and reform is the inevitable course of human history. And with the solidarity of freedom-loving people, change will come to Iran as well. So in the spirit of the Persian New Year, Norooz, we all look forward and celebrate, indeed, a new day for Iran as a truly free and democratic country and a republic worthy of its name. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, friends, and most importantly, the members of the Iranian resistance still imprisoned at Camp Liberty in Iraq. I would like to wish you all a happy Nowruz. I'm Brigadier General David Phillips, recently retired, and this is my 12th Nowruz celebration with the Iranian resistance. My first was in March 2004 at Camp Ashraf in Iraq. Amid the ruins of Iraq following the invasion, I found myself in a bastion of hope, prosperity, and a true desert oasis called Camp Ashraf. This group of dedicated and highly educated freedom fighters embraced the ideals of freedom and democracy and a hope for a non-nuclear Iran. We promised them safety, security, hope, and yet gave them nothing but misery, imprisonment, and death. Yes, we were complicit as a country in the death of several hundred unarmed men and women by walking away from our promises made in 2003 and 2004, which allowed for the slaughter. Those members of the resistance who were sanctioned by both the United Nations and the U.S. Department of State to remain behind at Camp Ashraf as caretakers of the former city were systematically murdered. These are not just an anonymous people at a place called Camp Liberty and that they have no impact on us. They are dedicated, educated men and women who asked for only one thing: freedom from a tyrannical regime. Let us remember whatever was believed would be gained by appeasing the Iranian regime was nothing more than a hopeless bad dream. There are many heroes in history who persevered through incredible hardships in fighting for freedom and democracy. I believe the foremost of which are those who are still doing so today, the heroes of the Iranian resistance. I respect them and am honored to say I personally served with the men and women of the Iranian resistance in the desert of Iraq. Also, I must mention a personal role model of mine, a magnificent leader who stands at the forefront of the fight against the mullah regime, who espouses democracy and gender equality. She is a woman who I personally know and respect. She will be revered in history as one of the foremost freedom fighters of all time, the phenomenal Madam Maryam Rajavi.
Happy Nowruz! The Persian people have a special place in their heart, not only for this celebration of spring and rebirth, but also for the human rights that Thomas Jefferson reminded us of what? That it was Cyrus the Great in 539 BC who produced that first document, that first manifesto in terms of the rights of human beings, the rights of every person to their freedom, to their religion, to following their own conscience, all ethnicities. This is the historic legacy of Persia. This is why Thomas Jefferson told his son to read the works of Cyrus the Great and to study that culture and study that history. In Iran itself, with respect to the theocratic regime, it does not respect the culture or the history of the Persian people. It does not respect the rights of Iranians. And it is to such an extent that they send their own agents, who have now killed 130 members of the MEK, who have now wounded 1,300. We took on a special responsibility on the part of the United States when we said that we would protect the people from the attacks that were emanating out of Iran. And our responsibility today is to see that we address not just their safety and security, but also we have an investigation with respect to those who caused those attacks, those who collaborated with the agents of the Iranian regime in order to kill those MEK members.
Thank you very, very much. And what a pleasure, what an honor, what a privilege it is for me to be here once again to celebrate the Persian New Year, Norooz, when we should all take a moment to remember those whom we lost at Camp Liberty and those who have fallen victim to the Iranian regime with their terrible human rights violations. So I will ask you for a moment of silence in their name. and human rights violations have increased. To make matters worse, we've actually given the Iranian regime $100 billion plus in sanctions relief. What are they going to be using that for? Absolutely, terrorism. Undoubtedly, it will be used to support its abuses and support for terror. There is no doubt. They're not interested in the well-being of the Iranian people. They're using that money for terror and for all of its proxies. Iran continues to be the #1 human rights violator in the world. Iran continues to be the #1 feeder of terrorism throughout the world. So I want to wish you a blessed new year. I want you to know that you have many friends in Congress. You just heard from the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. You have so many friends who are with you, and we will continue to be with you until that regime is no longer there and that terror machine is no longer working. Thank you so much.
Happy Norooz! Happy Norooz! And to all of you and to those of you who are soldiers who have been steadfast in the fight for Camp Ashraf and liberty, please know that it is a long journey, but there are those who will never forget and are waiting at every moment of your call. We'll fight and fight and fight until we have the Iran that recognizes and respects our dear sister, recognizes and respects all that you have done, recognizes and respects liberty and justice for all, recognizes and respects the freedom that is needed for our friends that are still in camp, and recognizes and respects the fact that no one should be denied their own humanity, which is all of you. Thank you. Happy, 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 happy Nowruz. Thank you so very much.